All right, it's 11:15 on the Monday after the Dallas Regional. I just finished watching Jets, Rodan Deck Tech, Rodan Video, whatever, tournament report, and we're doing one of these little walk and talk things again because, yeah, content begets content. That's the nature of karma, right? It's just a law of nature that there's an equal and opposite reaction to all things. Yeah, I found ultimately the thing I want to talk about is this claim that that Rodan was the best deck, that Rodan is the best deck, and kind of interrogate that, tickle that a little bit. Because I think it might be true. I think it's easy to say that, when you have the finals of a regional is a mirror, then you did it, you solved it, we cracked it. It's the same deck on either side. It's not even a different character. Although I said same deck, and that's empirically not true. That's very far from true. That's it's an overcharacterization of what happened. And I think it's important to maintain a level of awareness of what's going on. It's not just these easy categories that a deck is completely defined by its face card, that both the decisions inside of that deck, the actual list that's registered, as well as the person piloting it, as well as a lot of other more ephemeral factors, go into tournament performance and go into game design and game balance and curation of experiences in that way. This is making any, if I'm not, I'm caveating if it makes sense in my fucking YouTube video. But everyone wants to have an opinion of what should UVS games do with the banned list. What should they ban? What do we need to take out of the format? Because the format sucks. The format always sucks, and we need to fix it. I'm not having as much fun as I should have, and that's your fault. That's the oppressor's problem. That's the oppressors are the cause of my lack of enjoyment. Right? That's the dialogue. It's the dialogue tree. People won't say it so clearly, right? But that's what's going on. And even by characterizing it that way, it's a hostile reading, certainly, of the common discourse. Anyway, how about universes instead of armchair analyzing straw men? So there are a lot of good cards in this Rodan deck. That's, I think, my favorite takeaway from talking with Jet before this regional and in this video is that universes right now is overflowing with good stuff to be doing. And if there's something that you like, if there's a pet card you have, the reasons you like it are probably real and valid and good, and you're probably not even losing that much margin by, for instance, inflating your deck size to include your pet card, or cutting a better card that should go in that slot. I'm making air quotes with my fingers that are incredibly not getting picked up in this recording. Yeah, you can just do stuff these days, and you're not losing that much equity compared to, the perfect correct answer. And what's great about games is that even if the perfect correct answer existed out there somewhere in the world, even if we had a flawless engine that could play, provably unimprovable games, make the most correct decision, the most equity, until you are as good as that computer, as that engine, you are not actually maximizing your equity by doing what it does, as for one thing. And it's also probabilistic, right? If you make a choice that is better 51% of the time, it doesn't have to get in your way that you make the wrong choice in that position, and because you will only notice it if you're at a resolution of 50-1 at that odds ratio of 51% to 49%, you're still winning and only bleeding 2% of equity out in that situation. And so you need to play, a sample size on the order of hundreds of games to have enough data to even be likely to notice that in the data, in the outcomes, right? I love there's a line that I got somewhere from the Magic community that trading card games are the art of extrapolation from statistically insignificant data. It's finding things that are true despite not being able to demonstrate they're true within a margin of error. It's living in the margin of error. And living in the margins, that could be like I'm sure someone has a blog that is cooking in this space titled Living in the Margins or something. Yeah, and the margins between the best deck and the next best, the best build of Rodan, the best choices to put in your Rodan deck, and the next best choices are pretty small. And I think that is a very laudable outcome, right? There are times where we find the best deck, where everyone has the same best deck. Actually, I think this is my story of Chicago. From talking to Barlow at Chicago, he had a lot of really cogent things to say. And I remember actually, there's a crystallized thought. I don't know if I've necessarily put on wax very, very well so far. I talked with Barlow at Chicago, and he said, "Hey, here's my resume, so to speak. Here's my sources on this. Is that I'm showing up with the same deck that Travis Tangeman's playing. We're both succeeding at this tournament. We both came to the same conclusions independently. So this is probably correct. This is probably solid, rational analysis of the effects of Titan of Terror's character card, the particular layout and shape and characteristics of the format we're at large, right? That there exists like good 3-diff foundations and 2-diff foundations, but there also exist very good and very impactful 1/5 flip costs that play very well in the format. And also Destructive Heat Ray exists, and this character can be a Destructive Heat Ray merchant, and Destructive Heat Ray lets you make progress on a board while cashing up, poison damage or doom counters is creative ways of saying power tokens, right? But that effectively, building up the sword of Damocles that dangles over your opponent's head. Once you have as many power tokens as they have life total, or approximately that many, the game shifts completely, where they are now playing, I am never allowed to have the shields go down. You can deal as much damage as you want, as much damage as you want to me, but I must have the margin to block the next one, because the next one will always be lethal. That's that's the power of power tokens, right? But anyway, this is getting down the rabbit hole of Destructive Heat Ray impact and analyzing Titan of Terror impact. The first step of a productive debate is to understand what you're debating, and to hold off on proposing solutions is the stock phrase from the rationalist community. And I hate ban debates because everyone always leads with their favorite solution. I had a great conversation with Barlow, was what I was talking about, to get back on the track here a little bit. He led with, here is my homework, here is the shape of what I see, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. We're going to define the problem in high resolution. We're going to describe what it is and show you why, I'm not just making things up here. This is my analysis going into the format. I put my skin in the game. I said, this analysis drove me to register this particular deck, and someone else came to the same conclusions independently, and we're both succeeding. He's probably right about what he thinks about the format and what's going on and what the options are on the table and how they interact with each other. And Titan of Terror did get whacked after that tournament. I forget exactly what his preferred set of solutions to the format were. But I'm always frustrated after something does get banned and people take the conclusions that they want to take from it that are not necessarily connected to reality. Once I say this out loud, it's like, of course they will. That's how people work. But it is frustrating to try to, gather independent knowledge and truth from discourse. And hopefully this is helpful and productive in some way to anyone who might be listening to this, if I actually publish it anyway. But so that's some recent, this is some blessedly recent history, certainly from my full oeuvre of oeuvres, unky yammering about the game. Like, this is like 6 months ago recent history. It's not even 6 months, last regional, whatever, 2 regionals ago. So I guess 4 months. Hey, it's great to have a consistent schedule. Good job, UVS Games, this year. Shout out to Levi. May he find a bigger birdcage. May he enjoy the open skies for a little while. Shit, why am I hating? Anyway, so Unk history aside, we're in the banless window, right? We had a remarkable regional outcome. 4 copies of Rodan in the top 8, 4 out of 4 on Void after Las Vegas in a very different format with Reiner around. With Reiner at full power, getting power tokens to be able to transform. Lots of innovation still in that format, but we saw 2 different Rodan decks, including Drew Porat, our new regional champion, our repeating regional champion, our again regional, and still, I guess it's not really an and still. That's back-to-back defenses. But 4X Void Rodan, still some divergence in the deck building, still some liveness to the decks, still some diversity, still some particularization for different pilots, different opinions, different preferences, but clearly people say this is the best deck, and I'm not sure how you can disagree with that, except by denying the category of best deck, right? Saying it's incoherent to rate decks on on any objective scale. There's always particular, and there's no useful abstraction there. That might be defensible, but that's often the case in really healthy metagames, and it looks like maybe we're not in such a healthy metagame this week, this year, this month, whatever. So, what should UVS games do? What do I think? I think they should. I think they should and do resolve the situation in detail before they make that kind of decision. And they should consider if their models are accurate. And that's a cop-out answer. I don't have to think very hard before parroting an answer. I don't have skin in the game of running the game. I'm not responsible to their stakeholders. I'm not responsible to UVS Games shareholders. I'm not trying to sell booster packs or prop up a secondary market. These are all considerations UVS Games has to weigh that I don't have to weigh. But we have a shared goal of carefully and robustly understanding the truth, of finding the knowledge that's out there to gather. And that's a fun cooperative project if we want to embark on that. You and I, dear listener, as well, and perhaps we can help support UVS Games. So, should we ban Battra Arrives? I think that's an easy cop-out answer. And I think that I'm gonna directly take issue with, I think directly, Battra Arrives has a lot of despisable things about it. I think there are a lot of frustrating, bad parts of that card, and I think I'm flinching from saying overrated or weighted, excess importance is placed on one part of it, which is that it has funny interactions. It has surprising interactions where you have a block, you block the face shield, and Battra can cancel that, even though it's not where foundations normally are. Battra can cancel Smiling Death from the, played from the removed from game pile as the card's getting sacrificed. That's funny, that's weird. It covers a lot of angles. But I think that there's the guts of the reason you would ban Battra Arrives are fundamentally that it stifles the metagame, that it stifles the game, that it stifles the gameplay, right? It leads to uninteresting, uninteractive boards. It leads to negative outcomes in deck building of people just giving up and, cutting all the foundations that have text from their decks because, it's going to get canceled anyway, why bother? I'll just play the cheapest, most efficient stuff and hope they don't have Battras. Or cheapest, most efficient stuff and ignore Battras. You can always opt out of whatever sub-game you're being asked to play with these kind of cards. When there's an overpowered answer, you can just not ask the question. And I don't think people are doing that. I think that the balance of the game, there's a lot of power in foundations. Your deck is, you kind of have to play foundations in the first place. They're the foundation of the game. They're the foundation of the gameplay experience, that you buffer your control checks so that you're not just at the mercy of the top of your deck, and then they also let you extend. So you're playing foundations anyway, you might as well pick the ones with decent text, with useful abilities, and just not make them a completely load-bearing part of your personality unless you're willing to fight over them and find some way to solve Battra Arrives. Even though Battra Arrives, despite the Team Hero nerf, is still an answer to a lot of the answers to itself. The comedy of Battra was always, you Team Hero it in, and they have a R flip after your opponent builds a foundation, and you can just cancel the Battra Arrives. They solved that problem, but it doesn't look like it's solving the bigger question that Battra poses. Personally, I think responses at this level of resolution, response cancel, I hate cancels. If I could redesign the game from scratch, I would fix a lot of things, and cancels would be I'm pausing to think through this thought. I want to say I think roughly what I was going to say was cancels would be a victim of refactoring these questions, and it wouldn't even be possible to cancel something like we have in this game. I'm not sure that's true, but I'm not sure I had a scheme in mind when I started that sentence, and I was trying to retroactively construct one. But I really hate cancels. I hate the gameplay loop of I'm going to do something and then, hey, do you want to interrupt me? I hate the gameplay loop of I'm going to do something, but now we're going to both pause and wait and get confused about what's happening because I need to wait for you to maybe do something. This is especially acute with hand trap cancels and the attendant, potential outcomes of if you've played a game of universes and tried to draw a card from an effect and your opponent could have canceled it, that's a game rule violation. The side effects downstream of that for administration are nightmarish, and that's the reason why games like Lorcana and Star Wars Unlimited and every other modern game very more carefully regiments it. Right? In 1993, with Magic the Gathering, they didn't have the idea of a stack yet. It was all very novel. In 2006, they should have known better. And actually, I think they did know better, and they said, we're going to lean into the skid. We're going to say, no, we think everyone wants to have this kind of tedious dialogue all the time in their games because our lives aren't tedious enough. It's an angle, I guess. Some people are into that, I guess. But one thing I saw in, browsing Discords after I got off my plane and got home and said, hey, I have time to completely slack off today and recover from all this travel and 3-hour nights and stuff and terrible diet habits and stuff. I scrolled around. I've caught up on some Discords from over the... I was not catching up on Discord over the weekend, but I wasn't catching up on all the Discords, so I had some fertile conversations going. And I saw a claim that Battra Arrives is the best answer to Battra Arrives. And I understand why one could believe that. Battra Arrives does commit, and so that's better than a lot of answers. You know, if you lose the Battra's War, you aren't sacrificing your Battras just to get them canceled in the way that you have to when you're using a Smiling Death, when you're using a Last Words, when you're using a lot of death symbol cards, because the death symbol is the real victim of everything that's happening in universes these days. It's dying, guys. Like, it used to be good, and now it's just terrible, and everyone else is getting all these toys. But that's a bit for another day. Zoomers these days don't want to pay costs. They just, all they know is R commit and once per turn, SMH. Maybe a flip on if you're feeling committal, you know? Because you don't get flips back. The word commit is actually in the rule book. And so, like, in one sense you're committing, but you're actually not committing when you commit. This is very actually, you know, this is actually biting social commentary if you give it some room to breathe, which I intend to at some point in the near future, but I'll keep rambling. So now, right now, I'm about to decide which topic how many rabbit holes I'm climbing out of first here. Battra Arrives as an answer to itself. I had a great time in Dallas. I keep forgetting what the name of the city was, and then like thinking it's some other city. It's crazy. I had a great time in Dallas, and I played some Zeke Yeager in singles. Zeke Yeager 1 dot. Obviously, I picked a reasonable choice. I was kind of kiting on I was stealing final round's homework, and unfortunately, I did not steal their work ethic. And so at like 15 minutes to the tournament start, I had not submitted a deck list, nor made the decisions required to submit a deck list. And so I submitted a deck list with no sideboard, and with hastily, not necessarily very well thought out decisions, and also with zero playtesting of the deck. This was a bad call. Thankfully, I was punished in round 1 by losing to Jacob Johnson quite badly, while making both, you know, like a number of fundamental game mistakes. But I'm going down a rabbit trail. This is not the tournament report video. On Sunday in Dallas, I had a good time because I played Stone Man and I put Kami Chameleon in my deck. Kami Chameleon is a backup that is legal and standard and answers the hell out of Battra Arrives. And it's hard to cancel a backup ability because they've never printed a card that says after your opponent plays an ability on a backup, cancel it. There's one or two, you know, enhance ability cancels on it that doesn't care what card it came from, or it says non-character card. There's one or two, you know, ability that flips the foundation or ability that grants a speed bonus, but we don't see a lot of those these days. And so if your opponent has Battra Arrives and you have Kami Chameleon, if you're building that with Hunter's Ally, God forbid, like top 8 deck list, Armored All Might by Ryan Levine. I'm so glad that match was on stream. I can't wait to watch it. I bet it was peak. These are answers to Battra Arrives. If you think outside the box just a little bit, if you actually extend your creativity out into the world, there are more options than just playing the best deck. And that's a very positive sign, right? When I want to ban something, it's because the answer to that question is no. There isn't anything to do. Because that's not a game that's alive, that's a game that's dead. And when the game's dead, why are you even playing it? Do something better with your life, right? If you don't have choices, if you don't get to make choices, then why would you, like, that would be tedious and bad, basically. That fails to meet the virtues of the reason why we would play games. And of course, everyone has different opinions of what qualifies as not enough reasons to play the game. Everyone has their reasons to play the game. But I think that they all rhyme with, I want to make choices, I want my choices to matter, and I want to have fun. And I think all of these things are contraindicated by, there's only one real choice. There's a lot of mistakes you can make, obviously. There's always a lot of mistakes you can make. But there's a lot of big mistakes that are very loud and have very easy answers. think that's my kind of one of my watchwords lately is there's easy and there's hard. It's the easiest spectrum, which means it's a simple idea that can be communicated effectively. These hard ideas are hard to communicate. They require both skill on the part of the speaker and skillful construction. It's hard work to create a hard idea. It's fun to find it, to express it, whatever. And it's also hard work on the listener. And so people will misunderstand it or corrupt it or whatever. Lots of negative outcomes. And that's even if you're getting them to listen in the first place. This is my, I talk about peak universes. Peak universes is hard. That's the simple compressed version of it, is that it is a challenging experience that is worth having anyway. That is, and that effort pays itself off because it's fun and rewarding and to play and to experience, even if you aren't necessarily winning. A battle of hard fought is its own reward or whatever. And also you get reward, if you are pursuing peak universes, you'll probably get some rewards because you'll develop skills that, well, make you win more often, but also reward you outside of the game. Yeah, so I think I was gonna say that when I say slop, it means something that's easy. It's too easy. Problematically easy, even. The word problematic is slop, because it's a really easy idea to just label things problematic without taking the time to understand what makes it problematic and to elucidate that, to bridge the gap between someone else that might not perceive it the same way in the first place that you do, or share the same values that you do, that cause it to create a problem. And it also can easily often be that the lack of rigor causes a misperception, a distortion in your own perception. Not a fan of slop. Yeah, but slop, it's good. It is good to have some slop. It's good. It's a part of a healthy breakfast, You're too tired in the morning to want the hard stuff, but you do still need your daily caloric intake. The real peak of slop is when you mediate your slop peak reaction. Mediate your intake. There we go. Okay, let me get out of this. Where the hell am I? We're talking about Battra Arrives and Rodaniel, the deck of the moment. This was not a planned segue, but it actually kind of works. One thing I wanted to address here was Drew asked me, so hey, what do you think of this Rodan deck? I didn't want it to be a mill deck because I've expressed to him in the past. I'm disappointed in Rodan. I think this deck's lame. I don't like it, and I don't like that we're milling people. I wish we would kill people who, I wish we'd actually try to fight each other. And that kind of goes for both the Rodan deck. This is simultaneously a strategic invective, right? If you are leaving life points on the table habitually, you are winning less often than you could because your opponents being at a low life total constrains their options in a way that being at a full life total, they have more options, such as spending my life points as a resource somehow. Which that's not just like pay 1 health as a resource. That's like, I'm not going to hold any cards in my hand because I have enough health to tank the hits I expect you to be able to do, right? It's a broad category, a very inclusive category of ways to... Anyway. If you're further from winning, you are less likely to win. And if you take low-cost ways to become closer to winning, it makes you closer to winning. Circular argument, right? But anyway, I was disappointed in 2 ways by these Rodan decks. One was the lack of the peakness of it all, right? The lack of offense and defense of playing the whole game, and also I don't want to say the lack of creativity because there's a great depth of creativity, but the lack of personally inspiring, interesting things that I saw going on in these decks. This has been 100% of Rodan decks I've ever looked at. Not 100%. A very large majority of them. I look at the deck list and I scroll down and I see minus speed, draw a card. Minus speed, draw a card. And I wish for more. I'm very happy. Pressured for a while for 1. seems, at least, I haven't done a comprehensive review, it seems popular. But, so, dressing around, Drew asked me, and I said, I think it's dope. I like Combination Salvo, really cool card, plays some good offense, and has like a really good characteristic kind of like control deck finisher energy that says if you have played the game a little bit, if you played footsie with your opponents and scored a hit, or you get some momentum, now you get both damage and card advantage later on, and it scales up its big speed if you've gone on a little quest. It's got 6 difficulties, so it's like, you know, this is saying kind of, if you're an aggro slop deck, just playing the most efficient card in every way, this is not for you. But if you're playing a longer game, a bigger game, playing some defense first and going 4 or 5 turns, Combination Salvo might be the card for you. It's a custom card for Rodan. You don't have to play all the custom cards for your character, but usually you get some good equity from cards that fit well with your what your deck is already doing, right? And this is certainly a card that gets people dead and rewards you for playing some footsie with them, taking the easy hits when they give you easy hits to land, and then it puts them in hard positions later. And that's all, you know, the beauty of the powerful keyword. That is a topic I should probably just schedule a little walk and talk on and finally get recorded on wax, because that was one of the first, like, really clear, oh, hey, yeah, this game has some sauce, and I like the structure. I perceive the hidden structure of the game underneath the mechanics that I feel like I had. It was many years ago, I guess. Yes, this is a Drew appreciation video, as well as other things, to kind of flesh out my thoughts when he'd asked the question. I gave him some quick answers, but I think the coherent answer, the big answer to how do I feel about Rodan is, I realized that I just envy Rodan, and I have both the lack of inspiration of these decks are just doing the same things over and over, and they are then playing the game. These are all good, you know, like the fundamental steps of playing the game are, like the fundamental prices are like having cards to, you know, it's offense and defense is the first kind of split in the game. And then within offense and defense, well, how do you defend yourself? You can, broadly, you can either block or you can do everything else. You can, like, reduce damage, you can take away abilities, all that stuff. And we got a little bit of, and then it was, you know, we get a lot of, like, Rodan decks, especially Drew's Rodan decks, like, I feel like his characteristic play is playing a lot of Nonagons to answer his rivals' answers, his answers to their attacks. And it's kind of based that we're you know, we're going that deep down the rabbit hole. That's a positive quality. This is a deck that's covering its bases. It's well constructed in that way. But I envied Rodan because his cards are good. He gets to play all these custom cards. He gets to play Supersonic Flight. And what does he do with this bounty? He just plays the game in his set way. And I always found that disappointing. And I bounced off from the deck. Bounced off from ever playing the deck. Also in part because at the very first regional with Rodan Legal, I happened to get bounced out of top 8 in a very frustrating match playing Pony against Rodan. And man, yeah, actually, holy crap, the humiliation, dude, of he looks at his top card and thinks he gets all the power, he gets all the agency of what's going to happen next, and he just says, oh yeah, I'm not even making checks anymore, I'm just, here's the 6 I saw on top of my deck, and he hit me with like Titan Cliff, Ice Sword Execution, something else on turn, after I whiffed my kill by checking a long string of 3. I was player 1 in game 3 of the match back in St. Louis, and I took a line that was play a Horndash Hammer, play a 4-diff attack that might have been a throw, then, and I had a bad build on turn 1, but I put myself in a position to win on turn 3 by getting some horn counters, getting some momentum, and getting some damage on him. Then on turn 3, I believe I had a Tetra Terror Onslaught, kind of queued up, ready to go. I had some momentum sink, and I was going to try to win the game. I was setting myself to win on turn 3, even though I had a bad opening build as player 1. However, on top of my bad opening build, I then checked a pair of 3s on my 5 diff and my 4 diff, and my hand was kind of bad, so I tried to play a 2 diff to maximize my expectation of winning, because I needed to get cards out of my hand. I needed to make some progress. I checked yet another 3 on that, or it might have been like a 5 and a 3. Like a pair of 3s, 1 5 on these 3 control checks. And I said, I'll commit my character rather than ending my turn with nothing here to show for it. I played a 0 diff, checked a 5 on that, lol. Passed the turn, and he easily counted my life total with normal, like, with good checks and stuff, but completely unblockable attacks thanks to Rodan's big speed bump in my fragile position from bad checks as another 7-hand size character. He had to count 20. Nothing was ever was remotely defendable. And I didn't have any tricks or anything, because it was just, I was player 1, I was turn 2. I was trying to get greedy with my resources to make the most of it after a bad start. And between the raw envy of this deck gets to be better than me, clearly because it won that match. Also, then it's compounded by what I look for in decks is both, is excitement, is interesting, is kind of combos and interlocking, novelty things to be doing. And that was very, very seldom experienced looking at Rodan decks. Yeah, so the realization I had this weekend is that I envy the good symbol right now. I look at my character that has Chaos, Life, and Death, and I think, why can't I have nice things in these new sets? Look at Team Hero, look at Queen of the Monsters, look at Wide Awake. It is literally, this is a red pill in the Matrix, waking up from the nightmare of getting your cards sealed. The good symbol doesn't have to deal with that. Chaos, Life, and Death, it's just a struggle all the time. Fuck my chilled life. And it's incredibly funny too. It is recurringly fun. I hope it's not tiresome to everyone else hearing me make fun of my maladjusted emotions about the card game. But I think it's so funny to flog this bit into the ground. And I'm realizing, hey, that's like some percentage of my Rodan feelings as well. It's kind of boring. It's kind of uninteresting. It's lacking in novelty. It's lacking in verve. We can dress it up and call it, like, I can call a lot of Rodan decks fairly. I can call them gormless, but that's a way of dressing up that it's not interesting to me. It's not exciting to me. It doesn't build my love of the game to see someone say minus speed block, minus speed block, minus speed block. That's just taking away from the game. But it's important to take away something from some people because they're trying to do too much without trying hard enough. And my robust opinion about Rodan is that I haven't tried hard enough to understand Rodan, to build Rodan, to experience my own form of peak universes via Rodan. And so I don't have a lot of opinions about your Rodan deck, Drew, because I haven't earned them. I haven't earned the right to have an opinion because I haven't been in the arena with him. I've done it a little bit. I actually really like I played some of the air deck, air queen slop Rodan, and once again, buoyed by custom cards like Electric Moth. What a preposterous ability to give to an already very strong character. But, you never know how strong it is in advance. Speaking to the designers. Electric Moth that lets you choose the top card of your discard pile now. Net card neutral until your opponent's in a deep stage with 10 foundations. Not deadlock, but 10. Important distinction to draw there. Important distinction to notice that 10 lock and deadlock are very, very different words. But the Electric Moth Rodan deck on the air with Queen of the Monsters, and especially Invade from Space, felt so shockingly enjoyable in that deck. Because often you end up kind of having a surplus of cards one way or another, and getting to ponder while you're also drawing cards, or being able to draw into ponders on your ponder being the magic card here. Look at top 3, which then both it creates a flywheel effect where by drawing more cards, you are now getting card selection so that your next card draw effect draws the right cards that are more payoffs for drawing cards. Right? It's awesome. If you ever see a Queen of the Monsters, you will draw it, and then you will pog off because Queen of the Monsters makes you say PogChamp. I played a little bit of that deck. I had fun. But the Void decks, I can't even say they're intimidating necessarily, but I can say that I feel irresponsible playing those on zero practice in a tournament. Not just to myself, like I'm not giving myself enough equity, but I'd feel embarrassed if I'm stumbling through my least favorite thing about universes is being on the wrong end of a bad matchup or a bad draw or bad luck, and then having to patiently endure. I'm getting flashed at by an intruder alarm, I think. Just walking on the sidewalk. Patiently endure. My least favorite thing. Reset. Least favorite thing in universes is when I have to patiently endure a terrible board state that my opponent is just bad enough to mess up. Maybe. On the off chance they'll throw. And that they have shown me, they have given me reason to believe so lowly in their opinion, in my opinion of them, that they will make strategic blunders that will leave me enough rope to shimmy out, right? Enough slack in the noose that I can escape this situation. It's so painful. You can't just give up because you got to keep fighting. You have the opportunity. You could still win, but you shouldn't. It's wrong that you would ever escape this situation. They are wrong. They are making wrong decisions, and they are struggling to make wrong decisions, especially the struggling. And I sympathize with them, right? It's a hard game. That's the whole premise, right? We're not just watching YouTube. We're not watching TikToks here. We're not watching YouTube Shorts. We're fighting. That's the metaphor of universes. That we're two people fighting to the death. Like in a shonen anime that we watch on our phones, but like we're actually people that are in space together, and we're locked in a battle to the death, mediated by these pieces of cardboard. And that's exciting. But sometimes you're getting killed. You just have to watch the antelope, or what's the, sorry, not the antelope. I'm thinking of a stock phrase from a lantern control deck tech of I don't think it's a boa constrictor, like an anaconda eating it, like killing a deer by squeezing it for 40 minutes. And like an unedited video of that happening. Being that deer sucks. It really sucks. And especially if the anaconda is bad at its job, and like you've practiced fighting anacondas, and you know that it's supposed to put you in a pretzel like this, and it just isn't. And you're like, okay, so if I was the anaconda, I would do 14 things. I would if I saw a glimmer of light here, I would pack it up. But this anaconda has dead eyes. It is not thinking very hard. It's thinking as hard as it can, and it's not getting very far. This is not about you. If anyone is watching this thing, it's about them. This is a completely straw man. I'm genuinely not thinking of any particular situation this has happened that I'm like picturing in my head. I'm just picturing trying to flesh out this anaconda straw man because it's pretty funny to me, honestly. I'm having fun making this up. Genuinely. The anaconda doesn't know what it's doing. You know that what it should be doing, and it should be over, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's a shot. Oh, it's so bad. Because I've practiced quitting, right? One of the skills you learn in games is how to lose. You have to, because you can't win all the time, especially if you're a beginner. and there is something to be learned from every experience. And learning to quit is a strategy that can save you a lot of grief. Knowing how to quit, knowing when to quit, knowing how to, this situation sucks, let's hit the bricks. You don't have to sit around and chase that, 1% of 1% equity in a terrible situation in the hopes your opponent will make a mistake. But giving your opponent opportunities to make mistakes is also a skill, so you should never give up, is a reasonable belief to have, but only if you have the energy to keep fighting. Preserving your energy, at the end of the day, in a certain point of view, that is literally all there is preserving your energy. The mind is a predictive processing unit that is seeking to minimize the free energy expenditure. But that's way above my pay grade. And that's very much a different topic. This was not intended to be a video about scooping early in any sense. But, hey, we're going for a late night ramble. That's what we're here for. So, I think I got out most of what I had to say about Rodan. I wonder if you in the comments have had an experience of being the deer, getting killed by the anaconda, and it's very slow, it's very tedious. You wish it was over, but you're sure there might still be a chance. You just have to wait and hope and try to give them the opportunity to slip up. Let me know in the comments if that's happened to you. Don't give too many personal details, because it's a very insulting thing to say about your opponent. Rodan players largely, I would hate to be the anaconda to someone, is what I'm saying. That's actually what I'm saying. I would hate to be the guy stumbling over my Science Bros trigger, asking for takebacks. I think very strongly takebacks belong in the game. The game is socially constructed, and the game is much worse if it's all conducted in the high stakes, never give them an inch. If there's any advantage, you must take it and burn it. That is literally Moloch, the Carthaginian demon of child sacrifice, right? That is the race to the bottom. I do not wish to race to the bottom in my card game. Let's extend to each other some decency and some mutual understanding, and not try to grasp so tightly at every conceivable edge that we forget to play a game, that we forget to understand each other, and forget to set rules for the road so that it's not more painful than it needs to be, right? When there is enough free energy, because that's the other trade-off, is that the game is very hard. You reach the limits of your skill and your endurance and your capacities, and then obviously the race to the bottom dynamics come back in. We start trying to manage energy, etc., and start slipping up in different ways. But that's a very big topic that I'm straying from what I was saying. Playing Rodan is a lot of mechanical skills and a lot of just observing triggers, observing sequencing, making complicated decisions with some foresight, right? Some extension in the future. If I top deck this card like this, then I'll get this option, and I need to preserve this option if you're going to react in that way versus this way. If you're going to keep attacking, I need to have things ready, but I might be trading off permanent resources, right? You only get 4 supersonic flights a game. Unlike Kazuya's a gamer, you can do that more than 4 times. But King Ghidorah Unleashed, another permanent burned effect. And at a certain extent, Rodan can end up either decking, winning by literal exhaustion in the game mechanic. If you cannot refresh, we call that exhaustion. I think that's a really sick ludonarrative consonance there, that you have, your deck is giving you energy, and if you run out of deck, you have no energy left, so you have to quit. That's a very organic, very I said the big words already, ludonarrative consonance. That's a good agreement between gameplay mechanics and the story we're telling with the game. Fights are often finished by someone, preserving as much energy as they can and then lowering their defenses and either getting knocked out or, often getting knocked out, which in this metaphor is that, I'm refusing to block with anything until it's going to kill me because I only have 3 cards left in my deck. And I have the choice of either blocking and going to, a few enough cards, I'm going to get exhausted by my draw step, or not, and have one last final shot on my turn. Anyway. Yeah, I didn't feel like I had earned the execution skill to show up to a tournament with Void Rodan, let alone the depth of the strategic game trees I wanted to navigate, how I wanted to build my own Rodan deck. That was a very overwhelming prospect, and I wrote it off pretty quickly. Even with the idea of, hey, Nate, you schooled me in Amajiki before Las Vegas in 2024. We should do that again this week, and I just didn't quite shove the time and energy into my own schedule to make that happen. And I satisficed onto answers like Armored All Might and